Why is PSHE so very important, and what more can schools do to ensure the successful delivery of it? Welcome to the Boostara Podcast. I am your host, James. On the Boostara Podcast, we speak to leaders in business and education and uncover the truths and insights from their amazing experiences. At Boostara, we help companies leverage AI to boost growth, cut costs, and gain better business insights. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you, type the word growth into the comments below and we'll be sure to reach out. Today, we are joined by the wonderful Anne Morris, founder of Yipiyap. Hello, Anne.
Hello, James. Lovely to meet you and to be with you this morning. Really looking forward to the pod.
Absolutely fantastic to have you on, Anne. And I've got to ask, where are you calling us from today? Because we have listeners from all around the world.
Oh, fabulous. Well, I'm in Altrincham, sunny Altrincham today in South Manchester. So, northwest of England.
Brilliant, brilliant. And for those of our listeners that have not heard of yourself and not aware of what you do, could you just give us a brief overview, a brief introduction to yourself and the journey you've been on to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. So, I'm Morris. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Yipiyap. Now, that's always a strange name which needs a little bit of explaining. So, Yipiyap stands for Young Inspiring People, Inspiring Young Aspiring People. So, what's all this about? So, basically, my background is in teaching. So, I'm a maths teacher by trade. And 13 years ago, started Yipiyap to really provide the sort of support that I would have liked in the classroom in an academic context. So what we do at Yipiyap is recruit and employ 18-year-old school leavers, college leavers, so these are the young inspiring people, and they go into schools and colleges to support younger students, younger peers really, in their academic subjects. So you might have somebody who's just done an A-level in maths, taking a gap year for whatever reason, and they would go in to a local school or college and help support other learners with their maths because they find it a bit of a struggle. So this was the sort of thing that I would have really liked when I was in teaching, to have somebody come in, really hands-on help and support in the classroom. If you've got a class of 20 or more year 8s, 14-year-olds, it's like Tuesday afternoon and you're having to really keep everybody on task. Having that sort of young, relatable peer role model, effectively, come and speak about, come and work with them, I suppose, on their maths, or we went into English, science, etc. To be able to help and support really practically with those learners who need a little bit of extra help and support in the classroom. That's what Yipiyap does, or should I say did, because we actually finished doing our tutoring in the summer to focus on Peerscroller, which we're going to talk about this morning.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, I guess a good question for you would be, what sort of big impact have you seen from the extra tutoring side of things? And I don't know if is it wrong for me to say teacher assistants, or is that really a different kind of direction you would argue that you guys took with Yipiyap?
Yes, so our tutors were always employed by us, and so they weren't trained they didn't have a teaching assistant qualification. I guess if you saw them side by side, you might think they were doing a similar sort of role to a teaching assistant, but they wouldn't have in school the responsibilities of a teaching assistant to do break duties, dinner duties, go to meetings, all of this sort of thing. Because if a teaching assistant is employed by the school, they would be obliged to do those duties. But our tutors really just arrived in school and delivered academic support 5 hours a day alongside the teachers they were supporting. Often they'd take groups out and go and work with them separately, that sort of thing. But basically, they weren't teaching assistants in a technical sense, but they kind of helped in the classroom in a very practical way. And in terms of the difference that we've made, the thing about Yipiyap, the thing that sort of made us different is this peer-to-peer element. So particularly if a school is 11 to 16, so didn't have a sixth form, the idea of having somebody who was that sort of 18-year-old age coming in and having that resonance, it just, schools absolutely loved having our tutors in. They did a job which just nobody else in school could do, in terms of often engaging reluctant learners, those kids who really struggle with their maths or English, and then, they feel like working with one of our tutors in a bit more of a one-to-one or a small group, they just feel less under pressure about getting things wrong. There's no problem about that. They can just talk about things. They can have a little bit of a 5-minute break to talk about, other things, and that's where, a lot of schools saw the value in what we did was sort of helping those learners who find it really hard to access their education in class, they can have that sort of relatable peer to talk to them, yes, about the academics, but also, they can just talk about football for 5 minutes and then back to task, or talk about whatever it is that's, topical and trending, and that's really where our USP always was, in that peer-to-peer connection, which made a difference. So we were part of the National Tutoring Programme. I think that's, there are only 65 tutoring providers in the country, which were a part of that programme. This was the government's big flagship response to catch up after COVID. And so we were one of those, and I'm really proud of that, because most of the tuition providers on that scheme were, they had former teachers as their tutors, really well qualified in a sort of, professional sense, teachers, former teachers, or, that sort of colleague who would then be tutoring. For us to get on that list, having our tutors who literally were A-level qualified, so no other formal qualification other than having A-levels, was really, we were really impressed that we were able to do that, because, it was a very exclusive list to be on. And on the face of it, our tutors are not very qualified. Looking at it on paper, it looks like they're not very well qualified. But as one colleague that we worked with in college really cleverly put it, and very memorably put it for us, they are experts at being students in the modern age, and that's where their expertise lies. And so alongside a teaching setting where you've got so much experience and so much authority, having somebody who can come in and being expert at being a student is a really useful tool to have in your toolkit.
I think that's a very, very interesting approach, and it takes us away from the like you have to have X amount of qualifications or experience to be able to deliver certain results. But I think that's the whole point, isn't it? It's actually the results at the end speak for themselves. So what you did there was a completely different approach. Why try to do the same thing again and again and again? Use the same approach. Why don't we take a different approach to get better results? And I think that whole breaking down barriers to get to students to be more relatable and improve their educational outcomes in a wider sense, not just academic, right? And I think that's the point that you'll get into with Peerscroller. It's not linear; it's not the same path for every student in terms of academic success. And some students won't get academic success, but that doesn't mean that they can't and they shouldn't be successful in school in other areas, right? And I suppose this leads us nicely to Peerscroller. What is Peerscroller firstly, and what made you sort of go on this this path from the kind of the tutoring side, the connection side, as you've explained, to this very different approach?
Yes. So, I mean, the context there is really helpful. So, Peerscroller really came about because of conversations that we had with school leaders after the COVID, sort of in the aftermath of COVID, really, when things were getting back to normal, but clearly not back to normal in any real sense, schools having to deal with a lot of things on the ground. Just to paint a little bit of a picture as to how things were. So we had been operating we started in 2012, so we're thinking about sort of 2022 at this point. So we've been around for 10 years. And in that time, we'd worked often with the same schools year on year with a different tutor. Our tutors were pretty much all on a gap year, so the tutor would change year to year. But the schools got to know us really well as an organisation because we worked with those tutors very closely. They were young and they needed help and support in their first professional job as such. So, we really did work closely. And so we had very good relationships with the schools and colleges that we worked with. They really liked what we did. They trusted us to provide good tutors year on year. And so they came back to us. After COVID, as I say, 2022, we noticed that increasingly these colleagues that we knew and knew us were coming not just to arrange their support for the year ahead. Normally you'd be going on a call and saying, right, what would you like for your maths, your English, whatever. They would come with this sort of overbearing, really overarching sort of sense of weight around other things. So These would include attendance. That was obviously a huge thing, which is still a huge thing. It doesn't get quite the profile that it's getting at the moment, but it wasn't get straight after COVID. But it's still a really big concern for schools to have that attendance. Things like mental health, things like online safety. Clearly, we're now in a situation where it's misogyny that's a huge element. The flags, the deep fakes and AI, all of this is something which, at that point, schools were coming to us with these sorts of things, which were like, I want to talk about the academics, but these are my big issues that I'm facing. Yeah. So we kind of came at this from the point of view of, right, okay, we're having a conversation about it. And really they were saying, is there something, your tutors do have this really unique resonance. Is there some way that they can have a resonance about these other things as well? So we looked at it and thought, what could we do? And, we're problem solvers by nature. So we kind of really thought, how could we help with this? And what we felt wouldn't work is trying to train our 18-year-old tutors to deliver a session about vaping or to deliver a session about keeping your mental health tip-top or whatever. These things aren't going to fly if our tutors go in and talk about that, because they haven't got any credibility in those areas. They've got credibility at being experts at being students. So that's where, we sort of felt that wasn't going to be something that would work. But what we did was look at it from the other side of the coin and look where students were getting their information from currently. So where do they go, and can we influence that in any sense? So looking at that obviously took us straight to Instagram, TikTok, that sort of area of the internet. And so that's where students go almost exclusively. They don't go on websites particularly and go and find, they go to these social media sites to try and find their information. But we all know the difficulties that is fraught with. That's becoming increasingly clear, the misinformation, echo chambers, deliberately sort of trying to hacking and that sort of thing. It's really difficult, scamming, that sort of thing. And so we, thought, can we do something that would affect that? So effectively, that's where Peerscroller came from. And the idea of Peerscroller is to take all of those things which are engaging about those social media sites, to really sort of look at the graphics, the way that the information is presented to young people, and then try and mimic that in a way which is equally resonant and engaging, but only delivers good quality, useful, helpful, positive information. And that's what Boostara is. It's a bank of short-form video content which can be accessed in different ways, but all sort of ties into that idea.
Amazing. And you reminded me. Literally yesterday, I went to an event where there was a keynote speaker, Eddie the Eagle. And I don't know if you've seen his movie, right, or familiar with his story, but it was extremely inspiring. I knew of Eddie the Eagle, but I didn't know the details of his story and what he went through in his preparation for the Winter Olympics. And one of the attendees asked a question at the end. It was a question but an observation, saying that young people today, they should be hearing the exact story that Eddie the Eagle just presented to us. A story of resilience, perseverance, his attitude. Get up when you're at your lowest. This kind of thing. Like, children need to hear that. And what he was getting at was, children are influenced by influencers on YouTube, on TikTok, on all social media. The young people levitate towards these that are not necessarily the best influencers or the right type of influencers or the messages that we want young people to hear. And the attendee was saying, we want our young people to hear these kinds of stories, this kind of influence. But I guess probably from your perspective, a 61-year-old former Olympic athlete, that's not relatable, right? It's not related. The story is fantastic. It is the kind of influence that we want, in terms of values, in terms of attitude, but it's not relatable to young people. I think what you guys have done really well is using the concept of peer on peer, is having influential information delivered by people that young people can relate to. Is that right?
That's absolutely the crux of it. We could create exactly this content. So the way that the content's created is it's researched, scripted and fact-checked all in-house and then sent to it would have been our tutors, but we now recruit people specifically for this presentation role. And so they receive a script and they deliver it, but because they're peers to the people that this message is intended to, the authenticity comes across so strongly and that message has such greater resonance because it's a peer that's delivering it. So we could do exactly the same thing and just deliver it ourselves, but it wouldn't have anything like the kudos of what this has. So yeah, it's something which is a totally different take on how to approach this. And there's a lot of conversation at the moment, a lot of debate about children, phones, schools, smartphones, all of that, and we're absolutely on board and sympathetic with all of that. One option is banning everything, which is out there. There's a lot of pressure on schools to ban phones, and I absolutely am a former teacher. I can not agree more that having phones in schools would be very difficult. And so banning them, sort of putting them away in school, I think is absolutely right. But you've still got that issue of what happens after school. And, if you're going to have those devices, where is the safe place on them to go? And can we provide a safe place for young people to go where they will be engaged and go and look for information? Not all the time for every single thing. It's not going to cover absolutely everything. But, they will have somewhere where they know they can go that's safe and trustworthy, that they see in school, because this same content can be used in school in that context of a PSHE lesson or a form time or an assembly or something like that. So we can have our video content being shown. It's all short form videos, TikTok style, so it's all 2 minutes long, that sort of thing, less than that. So people know that it's going to be of a certain type of feel, but they will know that the quality of the information in there is good and right. And so this is where we are presenting it to schools for multiple uses in lesson time, for students to have if they're at secondary or above, for students to have on their phones on an app so they can go and access their age appropriate content anytime when it's useful to them. And that really ties into our mission of students taking ownership of their learning. We don't want to be sort of having to decide everything for people. If we give people a great big bank of useful information and wherever they're interested, that will take them on a certain route, then that's a great way to learn. So having that is a really useful tool for schools, and then also for parents as well. So there's a really holistic approach here where parents can also have access to this content, which they can then use to spark a conversation with their child. I just saw that. What do you think about that? And they can watch it together, and it's easy viewing. It's really useful tool for that. And then there's loads of other applications which I won't come to all in one go.
yeah, sure. I actually have a year six son, and last night we went to a school open evening, secondary school open evening at Beverley Grammar School, our local school. And it's all very exciting. It's the first time for me. He's the eldest of our two children. So had the headmaster's introduction and then walking around all of the different classrooms, and we ended up in it was a mixture PSHE and English classroom, and the teacher was extremely enthusiastic and explained, well, all of the teachers were. I was very relieved myself. It's always good when you have teachers that they themselves are enthusiastic and happy and obviously well looked after themselves from the senior leadership team. But he wanted to emphasise that a really good thing about the school is that they have dedicated PSHE lessons in the curriculum for all year groups. So he's a dedicated English and PSHE teacher, and that's not true across all schools. PSHE is optional, right? It's not ingrained into the standardized curriculum. So I guess a good question for you would be, why is PSHE so important, and why is this resource so important for schools to take seriously? Why would you really push and encourage headmasters, teachers, parents as well to really engage with this content, bring this content into the schools, or if the schools really don't have the time or the resources to deliver it, to encourage the students and parents to access this at home?
Yes, so, I think increasingly schools are providing just the information. When we first started creating Peerscroller, one of the really early responses was, our parents need to know this as well. This is sort of information which parents now, almost generationally, don't know in order to help and support their children. And that provides a really big problem for schools, because they expect a certain level of parental knowledge or education in order to help their own children. And if that's not there, then the schools need to provide it. So you've got this issue where schools are being the hub of the education around these other areas as well as the academics, that perhaps in olden days, previous times, it wasn't the case. It was all about the academics and none of this. So I think there's a natural challenge there where schools are expected to be delivering this information, or it's really useful for schools in order to not exacerbate problems that are on site, and that they can then educate themselves. It's difficult because if you have specialist PSHE leads, which some schools are now really embracing, and they have PSHE specialists delivering most, if not all, of their content, that's great. But if you haven't got those resource, resource in terms of the staff for that, you are relying on your subject teachers. And then, of course, it goes down a list of people's priorities, because if you're a geography teacher and your number one priority is your A-level geography students and getting them to where they need to be, then your one PSHE lesson a week with your form arguably may come way down that list. So you haven't really got the time, and to be honest, you may not feel you have the real expertise to talk about a lot of these subjects. So having something which at least gets you over the initial sort of difficulty about particularly the sensitive topics, so anything to do with sex and relationships or anything that's really controversial. If you've got something that that you can start your session off, and it's going to be a conversation starter, it's going to get you over that awkward first 2 or 3 minutes of a lesson where something is quite challenging for you personally as a professional who's not an expert in that topic, then this is going to be really useful. So I think from a school use in PSHE lessons point of view, that's very helpful for staff, for people setting up the training, which is often there's a PSHE lead that puts together all the PowerPoints for the half term or whatever for every other colleague. It's really quick and easy for them because everything that we have maps onto the curriculum, so they literally look at their curriculum objective and go and find the video that goes along with it, or choose from a small selection. So it's really easy to find content that works. So everybody in school is kind of happy with that. And as far as the kids go, the one thing that is so true about all children is that they all want to know how to be slightly more grown up than they are. They all want to know how to be on that next stage, whether that's primary school age children thinking about, what that might be like at secondary and wanting to be at big school, or whether it's...
I have this every single day with my...
whether it's younger secondary school thinking about GCSEs and what might they do for a job or whatever's next. And then when you move up to college, it's all about, sort of how do you actually rent in a house, or how do you actually manage your first pay slips, or what that's about. Everybody's wanting to be that next stage ahead, so everybody kind of wants to grow up in a sort of a way which leans into this idea that people will be interested in what's going on around them, the world around them. And I think young people are incredibly curious. Of course they are. That's why they're looking all over Instagram and TikTok for answers for all the questions that they have. But the problem is, as I say, the information that they're getting is not great. So an example of this is a colleague told me, because it was Mental Health Awareness Week earlier in the year, and said an example that a student had said to her was he'd seen a video on TikTok about somebody who said if you shower with an orange, that's going to help improve your mental health. And it's like, they just come across rubbish, which is, harmless in one sense, but just ridiculous in another. And how do young people know what to believe is obviously the thing, but it's when it becomes harmful, and obviously there's so much negative or extremist or very subtly extremist sort of building habit towards extremism, which is a huge concern. So the Home Office have approved Peerscroller as a resource to use in their workshops, because they can see the value of having this peer-to-peer voice delivering this sort of content, which will help young people know the truth and right answers and open up conversation. Because, as I say, ultimately there's only so much you can achieve in a 2-minute video. What you're really hoping for is to show a video and then bring a subject out into the open, talk about your experiences, talk about your different perspectives, bring all of that conversation out. So that's really what it's aimed for, aiming to do. And so far it's pretty early days, so we're getting there, really launching out this year from September in a really meaningful way this year. Last year, as we spoke before, a lot of it was about development and listening to staff and listening to students about what they wanted to see on there. And now we're really able to push forward with that this year.
Brilliant. And I suppose not to put it in a negative way, but do you expect much sort of like pushback from schools or from colleges, like, oh, it's not worth our time to invest in this, or what's the right way for you guys to really make sure there is quick and fast adoption? Because it is obviously, it's a no-brainer for me that this is it's the kind of thing that I want my son watching. It's the kind of thing that I would want, as a teacher, to have access to, in just the way that you said. This is all vetted information. You can feel safe and comfortable that this is the right kind of video to show to your class at the beginning to start that conversation. You're not having to go through reels of YouTube videos and watch all of the clips and understand, okay, which one do I choose, which one is right, and second guessing yourself. What is the best way for you guys to, I suppose, to push this out?
So we've worked with schools and colleges for a long time. So when we were setting it up, we did have that thought process. Do we allow individual accounts and just allow people to come on and access it? And I'm not as keen on that, because I think, firstly, from our point of view, because I'm selfishly on this, it's easier to reach a wider audience through an organisation. So an organisation like a school, what's happening is, often, if schools do allow phones in any way, shape or form, they're saying, right, okay, get your phone out, download this, put it away again. You've got coverage quite quickly with that. If they don't, it's being set for homework, and it's an easy homework for kids to do, so they will get it on their phones and go from there. So for us, in terms of getting it out there through schools and colleges, is definitely the best way. There was, I suppose, some concern about whether there would be pushback, certainly from the students. Students don't like being told what to have on their phones. I mean, there's a truth in that. But the way that it's being presented is such that they can see that what we're trying to do with this, and they can see that this is going to be useful. It is a resource which is going to be used in lessons, so it's something which school are keen for them to have, so they're pushing that forward. I think the fact it only takes up the space of about 2 photos on a phone is actually, the thing that's really most useful of all to students. They are always reluctant to give up any data or space on their phone for something that's to do with school. But what we are seeing is that because phones are away in school a lot of the time, obviously, when it gets to 4 o'clock, that's when you can see our activity really starting to take off with the students. And they've been looking over certainly evenings, weekends, that sort of thing, over the summer holidays, students often long for structure in their day, and it's when that structure is not there that it's almost when they need that voice to be there, so somewhere where they can go and have something that feels more substantial to them than just going and doom scrolling wherever it is they're going. So it's really useful and interesting to see how students are engaging with it out of school time as well as in their lessons. So
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I think we've given a lot of discussion to it, but I think probably for viewers and listeners, it's probably more helpful to actually see it, right? Because it is a visual, it is an audio sort of experience. So I'll very quickly, it just is on your website, and I encourage everyone to check this out, Peerscroller.com. You scroll down to the bottom, you can choose according to the key stage, the age of your child. Shall I play this far right one?
Yeah. It's not about a far right topic.
When we hear that word, we often think about being physically intimate with someone. And when we think about physical intimacy, sex is probably one of the first things that comes to mind. If you're over the age of consent, which is 16, by the way, sex with your partner might be something that you're starting to think about. But what if you don't feel ready to have sex? Or what if your religion doesn't allow it? Or what if it's just not something you might want? Well, first off, let me say there's nothing wrong with not wanting to have sex. And secondly, there are plenty of ways you can be intimate with someone that doesn't involve sex. You can still be physically intimate with your partner and never have to have sex. You can, for example, hold hands or hug or kiss or do whatever it is that you are comfortable with doing. There are also plenty of ways to be intimate with someone that doesn't include any form of physical contact at all. You can be intimate with ideas. You can share your ambitions and your dreams or some funny anecdotes from a family holiday years back. You can confide in them about things you...
I'll stop it there, but I think anyone watching or listening, you can get the sense from watching that straight away that's someone that your children would relate to, right? You exactly the concept of peer on peer, right, is relatable. Also, the kind of TikTok style feel of it again, because and this is something I've heard from lots of different industries. These children are growing up to be the next spenders.
Yeah.
They're going to overtake millennials as they are going to be the next spenders, and that for any company, any business that wants to engage this generation, they have to be there on TikTok, and they have to understand how the likes of those platforms and the behaviors that they interact with them it works. And I think the one thing that stands out for me is that for this generation, they do not like over perfect type media. They want things to feel raw. They want things to feel kind of natural. They will engage with that kind of content a lot more than they will the super perfect sort of ad style reach outs. And I think that's watching your clips, that's exactly the feel that you get. It's a natural conversation with someone that they can engage with.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we're aiming for, is something that feels so authentic. Somebody's made it in their bedroom, or they've made it in their lounge, or whatever. It's absolutely just turn the camera on and speak to the audience. So that's it. But I think what often belies that is the fact of how much goes in to make it look so easy to thrown together. There's always the devil's in the detail with all these things, and having the rigor of the research and the scripting and everything that goes into the presentation of that is really what makes it. Anybody could turn on and say anything, but the fact is that we have a real sort of process in place. So at the moment, as we're filming today, we've got around about 600 videos on the site, which cover from primary up to the end of post 16, so it covers pretty much the whole education spectrum. But we have about 1,400 in different stages of production, for instance. So we've got that sort of pipeline of content coming through.
It's a huge amount of content. And I'm curious, because I've got to ask you, AI, right? So, what part does AI play, in your operations? But then, more generally, what's your take, as an educator on the impacts of AI within the wider industry?
Well, I think, AI is obviously going to change everything, isn't it? But from our point of view, in terms of creation, content creation, we want to really use it as a tool. But like with all AI, my personal viewpoint on this is that it will, for the moment at least, the foreseeable, it will always need a lot of human interaction. For instance, we would like to look at AI to help with our editing, because we feel AI could really help speed up the editing side of things. That's probably the bottleneck for a lot of our content, is the editing. It takes a long time. But we tried a piece of AI software this week, and it wasn't up to scratch. We are looking into these things. It wasn't able to deliver the sort of time savings, even, never mind the quality. Well, it was more difficult to change something once it had been through the AI, and then that added more time on as well. So these things aren't as straightforward as I guess a lot of people think they are. That the AI, you just give it to AI and it will come back with something. It's really not at that stage for us at the moment just yet, but we are looking into it. So that was just one product, so we want to sort of try and test a number of different products to see if we can help, because I think that's for us the most obvious place is with the editing. With scripting as well, I mean, I'd like to create something which is like a closed AI, which has access to all of our scripts and our editorial guidelines and all of that, and then test that to see how that can work with the scripting, again, in the context of everything being overseen by humans and bringing that creative. That's the thing that we don't know, how much the AI can be creative around our content. So can it produce something which fits nicely but still brings something element? Can it have any element of experience that it brings to it? At the moment, that's a bit of a question that we're looking to bring in. But that's one thing which our script writers obviously we can do. We can look at the world and see where a suitable example might be that brings it in. So yeah, it's about sort of seeing where the tolerances are, but where it can save time. Certainly, we're looking at everything with that.
I can imagine with so many scripts as well. So many videos that you're putting out there is about volume, but also quality, right? It's maintaining that quality. That's the most important. What you put out to our young children, right?
Yeah.
Maintain the quality, but keep up.
Exactly. Keeping
right?
up the momentum with it. It's a real. But now we've stopped the tutoring. We've now got full focus on this, so we're able to build that momentum. I think the one thing to say, just on to be really clear about AI, is that Peerscroller will never have any AI presenters on there. This is all about getting real young people talking to real young people. And I think from an educator's point of view or a parent's point of view, you'd want to know that it's always a real person on the other side. And look, I mean, when I started this a year ago, I never thought that sentence would be something that I was saying, that we'd always have human presenters on Peerscroller. This is something which is gathering pace so quickly, but we want people to know that they will always be human presenters, and that there will always be this human level of oversight. Because I think people will just want to know that there's that rigor around it. And I think it will become increasingly a rare commodity. Now, how much people value that, a rare sort of aspect of things. As soon as AI becomes good enough, it'll become good enough to take over a lot of content, I guess. And it's therefore, what's the currency of having a real person delivering this? Yeah, we think that will still go a long way for young children for a long time.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, I guess is that a fear or sort of maybe danger in the future? I guess, do you think that young people are already sort of savvy to what is AI generated and what isn't? And I think the fact that if you put human certified, on maybe that will be a thing in the future, right? Yeah. That it builds that level of trust that young people feel comfortable. Okay, well, I know that this is the right information that's being presented to me, and it's not. There's no misuse or nothing wrong with this.
Yeah, I think this is where our background in education generally comes really to the fore, because in theory, you could get the AI to script it, you could get AI to film it, you could get the AI to edit it, you could do this very quickly. But who is behind all of that? If somebody were to do that, who are they, and what are they trying to say to young people? How trustworthy is that in effect? I think because we've got this real background heritage in education, we've worked, obviously my background, when I left school, went straight into teaching, that's where this is all grounded. And then Yipiyap leading to the tutoring, leading to Peerscroller, we've got this huge 13-year basis for doing great work with schools that is recognised, that is, as I say, we're part of that government scheme. We're now the Home Office. We have this trustworthy sort of, and we've worked hard to get it, but we now have this trustworthy sort of basis on which people think, right, Yipiyap, it's going to be fine, it's going to be good. It's all going to be with the right sort of heart behind it. So this is what we will be building on going forwards. But this is it, and I don't know how much that human stamp of having human, or how much that will hold in the future. But I suspect for parents, they will always want to have that element of having people in front of their children.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Well, from that, what is the vision going forward? Is it all about Peerscroller? Is that the focus of your attention, and the kind of impact that you guys want to have over this coming period? Is everything on Peerscroller?
Well, that's the focus certainly for the foreseeable. I think longer term, what I could see, so at the moment we are looking to take Peerscroller into different sorts of areas of independent use for schools. So there's things that come up all the time. We are literally asked every day for different types of content, whether that be in a meeting that I'm having. What I tend to find is that I'm having a meeting, somebody sees it and they go immediately to, what would I like to see on Peerscroller? What would I like to show my young people or my groups that I work with or whatever? And so it will, we get requests all the time from the flags, freedom of speech. The other day we had something, even as simple as, can you make something about bonfire safety, or Halloween's coming up, or mental health, or whatever.
That's interesting,
We get lots and lots of ideas coming forward. So there's absolutely no shortage of ideas, both from the curriculum and also from a topical point of view. We'd like to take it into areas which are of great use to schools. So at the moment, everything's in the mainstream, but we'd like to sort of design for a mainstream audience, but we'd like to take that into, a sort of inclusion area of Peerscroller, where if children are sort of have a neurodiverse need, then that would be catered for through Peerscroller. So that's one area we'd like to look into. Another is that we would like to look at careers and have something there which really spreads the net wide for careers advice, or looking at what potential different careers may be for young people, because that's another area where schools often really struggle. There isn't an awful lot of expertise in schools to kind of deliver that to a wider audience, so how do we get that good information out there? So all of that is in the pipeline, and loads of other ideas as well. But I think if I was thinking sort of slightly bigger picture and going sort of a little bit further down that road, it may seem a big ambition, but I think to have somewhere which we start off as an educational resource, it's trustworthy, young people go there in their own time because they're interested in looking for trustworthy information in a certain space. Can we build that into what might be the safe place online for young people to go, and really have that feel of, you're not going to, because it's a closed loop, because we control everything that goes on there, you've not got people putting random content on, and therefore we've got control of that safe place. And if we can develop that as an idea, then I think having that is of huge value to young people, where they know that they're not going to get messaging that they just don't want or need just on a feed because they happen to hover over something for 5 seconds, or less than 5 seconds, half a second, and just get more and more of the same negative.
That's I think a fantastic vision and idea to have, and it's the positive impact that I think that's the whole point of what you guys do is the end impact and the end goal that that it is having, and the potential of it can be even more and be even more all the time, right? And as well, the content, what you just said there, I guess that the topics, obviously, you open up one area like careers, and there's so much you can go into on that one area, but then every year society is changing, the world is changing, that inevitably new topics open up, new issues, new things that young people need to be aware of. It's always changing and developing. And I want to ask you, for our school headmasters, trust boards, parents, business owners that perhaps want to reach out to you directly, what's the best contact details to get you on, Anne?
So it's the website is peerscroller.com, so that's just Peerscroller.com, and there's obviously loads of information on there. If you're a teacher, there's lots of resources that you can take a little look at to see the sorts of things we do, because we put collections together. So for something like when adolescence came out, we had our misogyny pack, and so we've got a set of videos that goes along with that theme, and so on and so on. So Peerscroller.com has all the information. If you want to contact me separately, then it's Anne, A-N-N-E, at Yipiyap. So I'll spell that one, Yipiyap, so yipiyap.co.uk. And so that's where people...
Brilliant. And I would highly encourage everyone, if you're a parent, if you're a school leader, go onto that website, check out the videos at the bottom for the appropriate key stages, and look into this more, because it's just a fantastic resource and fantastic work that you are doing, and you can't stress enough the importance of PSHE in schools. If you didn't already know or understand about this topic, then you do need to dive in deeper. And I, as a parent with a child that's going to go into the teenage years, it's going to be something that I'm going to be looking at.
Good luck.
Well, exactly. But with these resources here, I think it makes my job a lot easier, and that's the whole point, I think. But been an absolutely fantastic conversation, and really thank you very much for coming on today.
Great, thanks ever so much for having me. It's been lovely to chat. Thanks, James.
Brilliant, and thank you all listeners for tuning in today. Please like and share this video so we can get this important message out to as many people as possible. Thank you very much.
Lovely, bye.